technique article is going to show you guys today how to take the stress chart, because at the end of the stress chart in the first session, the family will give you the top problems that they're dealing with. And you move in a transition statement to say to the family, now that we know your stress, would you like to know why these problems are occurring? And families love this metaphor, and I'll show you the importance. I actually brought an apple with me. I'll show you how to use this. It's intentionally bruised right now. And people I found over the years learn more by what you see than what you hear. Where we really get into some fun stuff today is I'll be showing you some video clips of how to introduce this technique, but I'll also be showing you a video clip of a session I did where we introduced toxic seeds, where the family become the detectives and they actually help discover, with your help, the top 2 toxic seeds that are producing the fruit, which in this case is the bruised apple. So there is 3 learning objectives today. When you leave here, you will know how to draw out the apple tree diagram for your families or individuals or couples. The beauty of this technique is it can cut across all 3 types of clients. You're going to show your clients what causes their unhealed trauma and how to heal it at the root level with this diagram. Then you're also going to show them how to use this diagram to go from a, hey, I'm here, just fix my child, and how this diagram propels them gently to fix my child to we all have to change. This is where I really enjoy, without even saying anything, the families start naturally moving towards more of a systemic view of the problem, or what Minuchin calls expanding the symptom. And kids are visibly relieved when you do this in the family, because they come in thinking it's just going to be about me, and you move them to a, we all have to change focus. Then there's 4 toxic seeds. I'll be focusing on the unhealed wound toxic seed and talking to you about how you can get definitions if you're interested in the other 4 toxic seeds, which is misuse of power, mental or physical impairment, or unmet primal needs. And our research over 8 years before we wrote this book, we actually went to the families themselves and said, identify for us the toxic seeds that are producing your child's symptoms, and they landed on these 4. So today, where we're going to be explaining the 3 steps within this technique. So I'm going to go first with explaining the apple tree metaphor, then how do you kind of blend in the toxic seed definitions, and then how do you explain undercurrents. We did a stress chart where we asked the family 0 to 100% on a bad week, how much stress do you have? And we asked Charles and his family to break down their top 3 stressors, which we call symptoms in psychology land or mental health land or social work land. But the families told us in our research, they didn't like the word symptom, they liked the word stress. That's why we use the word stress instead of symptom, but it's one and the same. The background information of the case, we talked about 15-year-old Charles. The main presenting problems were school problems and aggression. The aggressive incident was he broke Dad's wrist in anger, and you'll actually see Dad's wrist in kind of a sling. The traumatic event was Mom just up and left the family with no explanation. Although as I went into the case further, there was a deeper secret, but it wasn't revealed in the first session with this family. And then Dad is medicating his pain with extreme marijuana use or medical marijuana, and we're suspecting that Charles smokes with him. So where we left off last month was that Dad said, I have 80% stress. The neighbor that came along, who was very close to the family, said, I'm at 60% stress. And Charles had 20% stress. And the reason he had so little stress is because we found out later that he controlled the mood of the household. So the hierarchy was, as Charles was the king of the castle, and so why would he have stress? And that happens a lot with adolescents and children, is they don't have much stress because they control the mood of the household. And the problems that Charles listed were chores and screaming teachers, which we defined as a major category of school performance. Dad and Christy, the neighbor, said, we agree with chores, it stresses us out, but it goes deeper than this, extreme disrespect, and there's also aggression. That's common for two different people in the family to have similar stressors and also the same. So now enter in the FSTC tree diagram technique. It's what brings us here today. So at this point, the family now is glad that you put this on the board for them to see, and it helps you as the therapist as well. But then you say to yourself, okay, now I'm going to move into this technique, and there's 3 mini steps within this technique. So let's focus on step number 1, which is the apple tree metaphor, and I'm going to show a video clip of this. So the transition statement is in chapter 5 for those of you who have the book. And you say to the family, now that we know your stressors, let's find out what's causing your stress. And to do this, I'm going to draw an apple tree, and together we're going to find out why these stressors, which I said before are symptoms, and you list them off the problem chart, which for me, I would say you listed off aggression, disrespect, chores, and also I'm a big believer in metaphors. So a bonus technique I could give you today is what I often do is I'll hold up this apple and say, I'm going to show you now what I mean by an apple tree, and when the apples are bruised like this one is and full of worms, how do we know if the tree or the family tree is stressed? And how do we know when all the apples are bright and shiny? So again, I usually hide this behind my chair. Sometimes I'll throw it to the kid to catch like this. But again, what's great about this is that I used to do mostly talk therapy. And so this really grabs them with a metaphor, which is literally an apple that they can see. So I'll say to the family, okay, now let's look at these. And I also call these as another metaphor. These are the weeds that we see that we can pull. And a plant doctor will look at the tree and look at the apple and say, okay, the apple based on the fruit is either healthy or not, but a good plant doctor will go beneath the soil and look at these seeds that are the drivers or causes of the stressors, or as we call them, symptoms. So the learning moment off is what occurs to illustrate how this seed tree diagram moves your family from a child-only problem to a systemic family problem to solve. You may think that that's a small thing, but it's a huge thing, because where I usually got stuck when I first started treatment is the just fix the kid. And so when I tried to say, but parents or caregivers, I need your help, they would be like, nope, just fix your kid. I even had one story where a parent literally would just slow up the car and go, I'm going to Disney World, almost in a facetious way, and only would come back after I treated the case. And the parent called me up and said, boy, I like your individual work. I don't have to deal with the conflict as long as you're doing my job for me. And it just hit me like triangulation equals strangulation. So the parents were triangulating me to not do their job, and I was actually helping keep the system going in that direction. So this is an important moment. And then what are all the reasons why this apple tree metaphor might be a helpful way to begin trauma treatment for you, the participant? So let's go to the videotape. And how I do the videotape is that I will at times pause it, and sometimes I'll let it go through all the way. So let's go to the videotape and let's hear how I bring up this apple tree metaphor visually and how you can replicate the same thing with your families.
Needs and unhealthy undercurrents combine to create problem symptoms, which are represented as apples on this tree. Watch how this connect the dot exercise begins to hook the family and give them hope. Now that I know your stress, our next step is to figure out what's causing it. Okay. Oftentimes, the cause is unseen to the naked eye, so we're going to have to go below ground to look at it. And I'm going to need your help on this.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to draw a tree here. You see it over here, an apple tree. Okay. I'm going to draw it right underneath your stress chart, and I'll explain what it is and how it works, and then you guys can help me out here. I'm not a good drawer, of course, but I'll try to draw a tree here. That's supposed to be the tree. Okay, that's the stump, and then there's root systems underneath the tree. Then there's what's called seeds. Okay. If you look up here, there's apples on this tree. Okay. If I went to an apple tree and I was a plant doctor, they look at the fruit to see if this tree is stressed out. So Charles, if I went up to a tree and all the apples had worms in them, they're all bruised, would you say that that tree is probably stressed out? Okay? And if you went to another tree and all the fruit was just bright, shiny red, you'd know that that tree was pretty good. So the apples are what I can see with the naked eye. So if I went to your house, I could see aggression, right? So that's one apple. Fighting. I could also see the chores, you guys arguing over chores. I could also see disrespect. And I could see the big one, which is the heated arguments. If I was a fly on the wall, buzzing around your house and you know I was there, I could see that, right? And these are what's called symptoms. In other words, stressors. It's all the same word, two different ways. Again, I can know by you coughing today that you've got a virus maybe, or allergies. It's underneath the skin, right? You went to the doctor, they look at your eyes, ears, nose, throat, maybe do a throat culture if they thought you had strep throat. They put it under the microscope, unseen to the naked eye, right? But those would be the symptoms, okay? These are just symptoms, okay? I can see all these symptoms up here. The problem is, just like with a doctor, you gotta go beneath the soil or the skin to see what's really causing it. There's something toxic, a virus, okay, that's attacking your family, okay? And there's 4 potential toxic seeds. And I'm gonna go over each one, and I'm gonna ask each of you at the end of today to say your top 2 seeds that you think are producing the most poison. John, the most poison, Charles, and the most poison from your point of view that's killing this family or stressing it out.
One of the things as you look at this, you see the apple tree, is it slows therapy down. It used to be when I brought families together, I'd say, why are you here? What's the problem? And they would immediately use the session as a ability to do what they do in the living room, which is to attack each other, to blame game each other. This really helps slow things down where you're literally connecting the dots. So to summarize this segment, we really literally connected the dots to the stress chart. We linked the stress chart problems and / symptoms to the apples. Again, I gave you the bonus metaphor of using an actual apple if you want to, as well as the drawing. You can pre-draw the drawing like I did to the left. You can use the PowerPoint that you just saw, or which I normally do is I draw it out as well right underneath the stressors of the stress chart. And then I always say to the family, this is what we can see to the naked eye. I always say if I was a fly on the wall and I was at your house and looking down, I could see aggression. I could see the house being total disarray with no chores being done. I could see self-harm. I could see depression. And then I'm always looking at body language. I think good therapy is education and application. So right now I'm in an education mode, but I'm constantly looking at my clients saying, are they engaged? Dad's going like this. Charles is, intrigued. The neighbors waiting to see what's going to happen. So then I always use an analogy to the medical profession. Again, I normalize. I say, if you were going to the doctor, they would look at your symptoms. Do you have a strep throat? Do you have a fever? And again, I start to set up beautifully the on-ramp for toxic seeds, which is the next part of this technique.